Chapter 2 revealed so much, and today I wanted to go over what happened and give some theories on what it all actually means. Just to be clear, I will be talking about spoilers for the first two chapters, so this is your warning in case you're waiting to play the game. Really quick, I want to say thanks again for the support on my last few theory videos. It truly means so much. If you like what I go over today, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing. I would greatly appreciate it. So starting off, it becomes very apparent something strange is happening, affecting many people at Caledon. In my last theory video, I theorized that possibility of Sophie being the villain, and that she was a shapeshifter. Now, I'm not sure that Sophie is 100% the villain, but what I do know is something supernatural is occurring. People at Caledon are being accused of things they themselves did not do, and some are even seeing another version of themselves. Let's start out with Lucas. As we are snooping through his briefcase to find dirt to see if he's linked to Sophies Death, we find that there is no way he was involved with Cowhead being thrown into her car. We do, however, find a restraining order he's been working on against Sophie. He catches us in the act of snooping and begs us not to send it to Sophie. He starts to explain why he wants a restraining order, and at first it seems pretty odd. He details that his son has been saying horrible things to his mom that was told to him by Lucas. Lucas claims he would never have said any of those things to his son, and he thinks Sophie is the one who's telling Lucas's son these horrific things. We can choose whether to delete the photo or send it to Sophie. I chose to delete it. Although I'm not fond of Lucas so far, I have no reason to believe he would lie to us, especially if it's regarding his son. We then come across Reggie having a panic attack. After calming him down, he explains he saw something horrifying at the observatory. He says that he saw himself, and of course, we have no reason not to believe him. Finally, we have Gwen. Earlier in the chapter, we can snoop through her office. We find that she was in fact the reason for killing Sophie's book deal. Details on why for now are unknown, but it still begs the question. What could Gwen have been so scared of to send concerning information about Sophie to the publisher? We also can find out Gwen is in some sort of trouble with Dr. Fiat. After we talk to Reggie, we can go up to the observatory to the location Sophie was killed. We find Gwen up there and she informs us they are letting her go. Gwen hands Max a flash drive and explains they have video proof of Gwen selling drugs on campus. However, Gwen states that it never happened. Gwen throws the flash drive in the trash can and lights it on fire. Rachel Amber. We can choose whether or not to save the footage from the fire or to stand with Gwen. I chose to stand with her. As much as I wanted to see what was on the flash drive, I again had no reason not to believe her, especially after hearing about everybody else who is having somewhat of a similar problem to the impersonator doing heinous acts in disguise as these people, so it looks like they are the ones who are doing it. After Gwen leaves, we inspect the crime scene. Under the tarp of where Sophie's body laid, we can see the flowers are growing exactly in the shape of how her body was on the ground. And in winter! Loretta appears as we are investigating the crime scene, and we get some info on her regarding another murder that happened a while back. Someone named Maya, and apparently she was a writer just like Sophie. I don't think there's enough evidence to connect the two murders yet, but maybe in another chapter we will get to learn more. As we are talking to Loretta, Moses is blowing up Max's phone, needing her to come to him right away. We go to Moses, and this is when we meet Detective Alderman, who is working on Sophie's case. Moses informs us that he thinks he is the top suspect because he stole Sophie's camera from the crime scene. His reasoning for doing so was he didn't want Sophie's last photo of them to be in the hands of the police, which, I get, but also Moses, that is evidence. Anyway, by switching between timelines, we are able to snag the camera he hid in a vent. This is also the time we find out Max can send items to different timelines. We will come back to this later. So after we get the camera, we head back to Max's place to unwind and look at the photos Sophie took. Also, for early access players, this is when we get a cat. I named my Miso in case you were wondering. So we go down to Max's dark room to load up the photos on her computer. Also, I find it ironic Max has her own darkroom now, especially with her last darkroom experience. Anyways, as we are looking at the last photo of them all together, we see there's one more photo Sophie took. When the photo is revealed, we can see that it's a photo of Max. But not just any photo of Max, but Max pointing a gun at Sophie. When I tell you, my jaw dropped when I saw this. So, with all of this information, we can easily gather that something supernatural is occurring. But what? Well, going back to the shapeshifter theory, it would make sense for someone here at Caledon to be impersonating all of these people. Whether it's Sophie or not, I'm not sure. I thought so at first, but now that we see her last photo was quote-unquote Max holding a gun at Sophie, I'm not sure how that would have been possible, unless the photo was a setup and Sophie transformed into Max and took the picture of her holding a gun to put the blame on Max for her death. Maybe it was someone else other than Sophie. So far we know Lucas, Reggie, and Gwen have an issue with another version of themselves, so I think we can say that none of them are the shapeshifter. Unless they are, and made up a story to blend in with the others. And with seeing the photo of Max at the end, maybe it is someone who is out to get Max and want her to take the fall for it. Maybe even someone from her past. My next theory is that the two timelines Max is traversing through are meshing together into one. Things that people would not have done in one timeline might be doing in another, and somehow the more Max traverses through the timelines, the more the fabric of them rips apart, bleeding the aspects of each other into one another. It would also help this theory if there are more than just the two timelines that we've seen so far. Why wouldn't there be more? With endless possibilities, there could be an infinite number of timelines combining, not just the two we've seen. Another thing that helps this theory is the fact that we find out that Max can send items from one timeline to another. When we are being stealthy, trying to get Moses' camera and avoid being detected by Alderman, Max goes to move the crates to the telescope Moses had, and they start to glow. When she presses harder, the telescope that's built in the Alive timeline gets sent to the timeline Sophie is dead, removing the crates and putting them in the opposite timeline. Alderman is notably flabbergasted, as he should be, by seeing the telescope appear out of nowhere. Also to point out, throughout the game, we can find Polaroids laying around, and if Max picks them up, it plays a memory, but one that did not happen in her current timeline that she does not remember, which is another reason to believe all of these timelines could be meshing. I expect this to play a big role for explaining on what's going on. And finally, what if it actually was Max who killed Sophie? What if that was actually Max in the photo killing her? Originally, this theory had two different versions, one being that it was Evil Max. Not saying that it's not possible for Evil Max to show up in the game, but I don't think that was an evil version of Max killing Sophie. And the reasoning behind that is in the photo, Max is crying. Evil Max would not be crying in this scenario. So now, how does this theory work? Well, picture this. Imagine towards the end of the game, something horrible happens, or Max finds out Sophie was the reason for all these bad things occurring. Maybe even Sophie being the reason for these timelines meshing. Max looks back at the last photo Sophie took of them and travels back to it. She knows she has to kill Sophie, but it pains her to do it, which is why she's crying. How she got the gun? Well, that part I'm unsure about. But what if future Max did not switch timelines like current Max does? If we look back at the scene when Sophie dies, as soon as she walks away, Max starts having these spells happen. Maybe it's a coincidence, it's only happening when she takes photos, but from her past, we know she can time travel to a period in that photo. So, when future Max comes back to this scene, it has an effect on current Max from two Maxes being in one timeline. Before, in the first Life is Strange game, when we would go back in time, there would only be one Max. But maybe this time, it didn't, and created another version of Max. And that's the reasoning that current Max can switch between timelines now. And also why she started to faint around the time future Max would have came back. Now, I want to bring up a few things that are strange but might have an important role later in the game. For starters, in the first chapter, one of the main choices was in a conversation with Yasmin. She asks if we think Sophie took her own life. Now, with this question being so early in the game and one of the bigger choices, it definitely feels like it has a bigger meaning. For us players, we literally just met Sophie and know next to nothing about her. How would we know if she would do such a thing? It just seems like an oddly specific placement. If we had been asked this question about Kate from Life is Strange 1, I think with us knowing what she was going through, it would have been easy to imagine her doing that. But with Sophie, we had no idea what she was going through mentally. The next thing that doesn't make sense is the picture we find on Ben's phone of him and Sophie, which alludes to them half hooking up. First off, it seems really odd to take a selfie after doing that, and so far we can gather she does not like having her picture taken and often hides herself. Maybe there's a deeper meaning for that to be discovered, but anyways, it seems random for them to be hooking up in the first place. Unless one of them is a shapeshifter, which would make this scenario so much more messed up, so hopefully that's not the case. Next, looking back at when Max finds a phone on her way to the crime scene, it rings. At first, when we look down, it says unknown caller. As we listen, we can tell it's the phone call Sophie was having before she died. Max drops the phone in shock. If we look closely, we can see the caller's name is Mariah. We have no idea who Mariah is yet, maybe the publisher for Sophie's book? Also to point out here, an owl appears during this scene. It's rumored to believe the owl is Max's spirit animal, and the timing of seeing it twice during these events would make sense. But what doesn't make sense is how the phone got there in the first place. Maybe when Sophie was walking up to the top of the hill, she was so mad she sat her phone down on that rock, but how would nobody notice it since it's kind of hard to miss? Well, maybe Max was the only one who could see it due to her shifting powers. It also helps to note that we don't end up collecting the phone, and after Max drops it, it disappears. Another thing that doesn't make sense is Sophie's death and how it happened. Other than the obvious, the timing does not add up.
Shit.
As Max is running up the hill to
Sophie, hang
Sophie,
on.
we hear a gunshot, but then, as we go around the corner, we see Sophie standing up, walking to the bench. When we get to the top of the hill, we see her on the bench dead. If Sophie was hit from that shot in her chest, she would have fallen over immediately and died, not walk over to the bench to sit down. Also to point out, when we hear the gunshot, we see these colorful auras around Max. Why would those auras appear? That kind of takes me back to the future Max coming to kill Sophie theory. One final possibility I want to discuss is what if Sophie is the reason for Max and Chloe breaking up? What if Sophie wrote the breakup letter as Chloe? Maybe she was jealous of the relationship they had. Half of the Life is Strange community right now is enraged at the breakup and Chloe supposedly not being in the game. I personally do ship Max and Chloe, but if it comes down to the fact that they just broke up, I would understand. They went through so much trauma together. Personally, I think we will see Chloe in the game at some point. The Reddit post leaking the game's plot years ago has been spot on so far. They also mention Chloe can make an appearance if you keep her alive. And so far, I have no reason not to believe this theory. Also, the developers said they would respect both endings from the first game, and I trust them. And for me, if Chloe doesn't show up, it's not a deal breaker. Of course, I would love to see her, but I'm not going to refund the game just because my favorite ship isn't in it. I know the developers have been very quiet on this topic, but the game isn't even completely out, so we still don't have 100% proof that Chloe is not in the game. Anyways, guys, that's all I have for today. Let me know what you guys think happened, and if you have any explanations to add to these mysteries. I have one more video I want to get out before the full release next week. Soon, we will finally get to the bottom of this, and who knows, maybe one of these theories are correct. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.